Hi there, it's Mrs. Wackerly. This is chapter 23 of Roland Smith's Peak. This chapter is called Unrest. Being selfish and focused turned out not to be a problem. After Josh dropped the K2 bomb in my tent, he dropped a second bomb on his clients. He told them about his plan to get me to the summit. I wasn't invited to the meeting, but I certainly experienced the aftermath of the explosion the next morning. I slept late and woke up sore and famished. It had snowed a couple of feet during the night, and I had to dig my way out of the tent. When I finally got to my feet and looked around, I was surprised how much the camp had emptied out. I guess I was so upset the day before I hadn't noticed. But most of the big commercial operations were still in place, but it looked like at least a third of the smaller expeditions had pulled up stakes. I glanced at Captain Scheck's compound and was tempted to give him a wave, but decided not to. I didn't have time for juvenile antics. I had to stay focused and disciplined if I wanted to get to the summit. Besides, I was starving, and the delicious white smoke billowing from the mess tent's chimney was calling to me. Inside was food, warmth, and conversation. But I was a little worried about the conversation part. I didn't want to get too close to anyone and catch the bug that was threatening everyone's climb. I needn't have worried about the conversation part, because as soon as I stepped inside, all conversations ceased. The only sound was the hiss of the gas burner and the clatter of the lid on the boiling noodle pot. There were 10 people inside the tent, and they were all staring at me. None of them were smiling. I would have turned around and left if I wasn't so hungry. "Speak of the devil," the cowboy from Abilene drawled. He looked like he had lost 20 pounds since the last time I saw him. In fact, all the climbers looked like they had dropped weight. None of them were eating. "What's going on?" I said as casually as I could with 10 pairs of eyes glaring at me. I walked to the shelf and grabbed a plate. "We're having a meeting," someone said. "A private meeting," someone else said. That was obvious. There wasn't a single person from HQ there. No cook, no film crew, no Sherpas. "I'm just getting something to eat," I said. "It'll only take a minute and I'll get out of your way." "Well," the cowboy said, "while we got you here, maybe you can fill us in on when you found out your daddy was planning to put you on top of the mountain." What goes around comes around. Now I knew how Sunjo must have felt the week before. I scooped a pile of noodles onto my plate, but my appetite was quickly going away. "Not till I got over here," I hedged. Then I put a fork full of noodles into my mouth, hoping I wouldn't have to answer any more questions on my way out the door with my plate. "Course you realize the noodles you're eating, the plate they're on, maybe even the parka you're wearing, were paid for by the people sitting in this mess tent." This was an exaggeration, but he had a point. So I set my plate on the table and walked out, hoping that one of them would call me back in and say they were kidding. No one did. The HQ tent was less hostile, but not much cheerier. Josh, Thaddeus, Leah, and the others seemed to be having a meeting of their own. "I was just over at the mess tent," I said. "How was their mood?" Thaddeus asked. "Ugly." "They'll get over it," Josh said. "It's been a rough climbing season, what with the weather and everyone getting sick. I've seen it all before. As soon as we get a couple people to the top, everything will be fine." No one else in the room seemed to share his opinion, least of all Thaddeus, who said he thought the climbers would sue peak experience and would probably win. "Did you tell them about Sunjo?" I asked. "No," Josh said. "That would have sent them over the edge. That's our little secret, although Scheck seems to have figured it out. We're going to shift everything again. Zopa, Sunjo, Yogi, and Yash are the C team. They're still on our climbing permit, but they're on their own. Peak, you're on the A team with me. We'll divide the film crew between the teams. As soon as JR is better, we'll start filming the A and B teams. We probably won't use any of the footage, but the fact that they're being interviewed for the documentary might improve their attitudes." He looked at Leah. "What's your best guess about when this virus will run its course?" "A week, maybe longer." She looked like she was suffering from it too. "The biggest problem is the after effects. Because we can't exercise and keep food down, we're losing our conditioning. Even under ideal circumstances, it would be difficult for any of us to summit." "There's nothing we can do about that," Josh said. "We'll either make it or we won't. And that's no different than any other year." The tent flap opened and the Texan stepped inside. "Glad you're all here," he said. "We've been talking, and we thought you'd like to know that none of us are climbing with the boy. We didn't spend our money, time, and effort to get a kid up to the summit." He looked at me. "It's nothing personal, son. I think you landed in the middle of this mess just like we did." Thanks for telling me, Josh said, but I decide who goes to the summit and who's on the team. The Texan gave him a hard smile. Well, Josh, you're the boss, but if you decide we have to climb with your boy, then we're not climbing at all. We'll head home, and y'all will have to deal with our lawyers. Well, y'all might as well pack up and leave today, Josh said angrily. 2 or 3 years from now, you might win your case and maybe even get some of your money back, but none of you will have made it to the top of the world. If the Texan had a 6-shooter strapped around his waist, I think he would have drawn it. Instead, he glared at Josh for a moment, then stomped out of the tent. He's bluffing, Josh said confidently. Thaddeus didn't look nearly as confident, nor did anyone else. In keeping with my mother's suggestion about being selfish, I did not step forward and offer to give up my spot. I might have if I thought Josh would refuse my selfless sacrifice for the team, but I wasn't sure what he would do. The argument we'd had from the day before was far from resolved, and nobody had mentioned it, but the delay from my team change meant there was a good chance I wouldn't get to the summit before my 15th birthday. Both Josh and Thaddeus had to have figured this out. The bottom line was that if Sunjo made it to the top, they didn't need me. The next couple days I kept a low profile, which wasn't hard since no one wanted anything to do with me. Josh's clients didn't pack up and leave, but they didn't back off either. I think they were sticking around to see if Josh would back off. There were no more complaints about my eating their food in the mess tent, but the silent treatment and resentful glares continued. Instead of getting enmeshed in the mountain madness, I went climbing. One thing Camp 4 had taught me was that I needed to hone my ice climbing techniques. I think one of the reasons I had such a difficult time climbing to the col was my clumsy crampon moves. I hadn't done a lot of ice climbing. Efficiency saves energy, and energy is as elusive as the air the higher you go. I found an ice wall about a half-mile outside camp and spent hours every day trying different routes to the top. I slipped, fell, and scraped myself, but I got a little better with each climb. At night, I stayed in my tent, writing in my second moleskine, and I tried to visualize my final assault on the summit. I even went so far as to make a special prayer flag. I took one of the yellow flags and carefully drew a mountain on it with a blue Sharpie. I hung it outside my tent, staring at it for hours. On top of the summit is a pole buried in the ice with a metal wire hanging from it. From dozens of prayer flags beaten by the winds. Over and over again, I imagined myself struggling up to that pole and tagging Everest. Captain Scheck was still looking for Sunjo. Every morning when I headed to the wall, he had a soldier follow me. I guess he thought my practice climbs were a ruse to meet secretly with the mystery boy. I actually didn't mind being followed. If I had an accident, at least there would be someone around to help me or run back to base and get help. Zopa, Yogi, and Yash were staying at base camp, but keeping a low profile. I saw them once in a while, but we hadn't spoken since we got back. I suspected Captain Scheck was watching them too, and they were keeping their distance. On the third day, we got word that 9 climbers had reached the summit from the north side, virtually every climber who tried that day. Now, you would think this news would be received with great joy, and on the surface it was, but just below the surface was a great deal of jealousy and resentment. If we hadn't gotten sick, if Josh hadn't abandoned us on the trip to the mountain, if he hadn't brought his son to Everest, that could have been us. We would be headed home in a few days. There may not be another window, and other complaints were whispered just loud enough for me to hear in the mess tent that evening during dinner. The carping was interrupted by the appearance of Josh and Thaddeus along with the film crew. I hadn't seen any of them in the mess tent since I returned from Camp 4. Like the other climbers, JR, Jack, and Will had lost weight and still looked a little weak, but way better than they had on the way down. If your health continues to improve, Josh began, and if the weather is good, I hope to start the teams up to the summit in a week to 10 days. Tomorrow morning we'll start filming interviews with you for the documentary, JR added. The teams were not impressed by either announcement. You still planning to put your son on the top? The Texan asked. Yes, Josh said. Are you still planning to quit if I do? If he goes, we leave. That's the deal. He didn't look like he was bluffing, nor did the others. These were not professional climbers. They were all successful business people and very used to getting their way. Suit yourselves, Josh said with a sad grin. I had a bad feeling that Josh was the one bluffing, not them. He was going to blink first, and if he didn't, Thaddeus would blink for him.